Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Today is our second lesson of the week for ELA. We're continuing with Anne of Green Gables, chapter 7. Today, our aim is I can visualize a text read aloud. All right, so we'll be going over the word visualize as well as some of the chapters of Anne of Green Gables and some facts about the book. Okay, so the book Anne of Green Gables was written more than 100 years ago. It was written by a woman named Lucy Montgomery. Her book was long. It was almost 200 pages long. And also it used many old-fashioned words that people nowadays don't use. So to make the story shorter and easier to read, other authors have rewritten this book. So the book that we read from Anne of Green Gables and the audio recording that we listen to is not the original version of the book. It's a rewritten version that was made shorter and they use more modern language so that it's easier for us to understand. So like I said, our book doesn't include some of the things that Lucy Montgomery wrote about in her original book. So today I'm going to be reading you a part of the story that's from Lucy's actual book and not from our version. So you guys are going to listen to me read aloud this part of the story, and then later you'll watch the movie of that part of the story that's not included in our book. And as I'm reading to you guys, I want you to be visualizing. So when you visualize, you make a mental picture or a movie in your mind to what you're listening to. Not all books are going to have pictures, so sometimes when you're reading, or actually all the time when you're reading, in your mind you should be making pictures of what you think the characters look like, what you think the setting looks like, what you think it looks like as the events happen. So this is something that good readers do naturally. Good readers visualize. So I want you guys to practice visualizing while I'm reading the story. This part of the book is called Anne Quits School. And like I said, it's not included in our version of the book. All right, so listen up and visualize while I read out loud. Anne quit school. Recess had ended, but many of the boys and Aunt Shirley were still outside. The teacher, Mr. Phillips, would not be happy with anyone who was late to class. The last group of students rushed through the schoolhouse door and took their seats just before Mr. Phillips entered the room. Anne was the last to take her seat. She was breathing hard when Mr. Phillips called her name. Anne Shirley, said Mr. Phillips, you seem to like being with the boys at recess. I think it's time you sit with them during class. Now take those silly flowers out of your hair and go sit with Gilbert Blythe. Anne just stood there. She could not believe what she was hearing. Sit with the boys? Sit with Gilbert Blythe? Never. But sir, said Anne, girls don't sit with boys at school, and I could never sit next to that boy. You do as I say, Mr. Phillips said again. Anne could feel tears in her eyes, but what could she do? She hated Gilbert Blythe, and now she hated Mr. Phillips as well. Anne felt ashamed as she moved slowly across the room. She could feel the eyes of every girl following her. Anne sat next to Gilbert and buried her face in her arms. Mr. Phillips turned his attention to the class. Take out your slates, he said. Study your numbers. The math quiz begins in exactly 5 minutes. Anne didn't care about a math quiz. She didn't care about school. Mr. Phillips had humiliated her in front of everyone. Gilbert felt sorry for Anne. He felt sorry that he had ever teased her at all. He really liked Anne, a lot. He just didn't know how to show it. Oh wow, so he actually likes her, but I guess he was teasing her because he didn't know how to tell her in a nice way that he liked her or to try to be her friend. Gilbert remembered a small candy that was in his book bag. The candy had a heart on it, and Gilbert had wanted to give it to Anne, but could never find the courage to do so. He found that courage now. He picked up the candy and pushed it across the desk to Anne's fingers. Anne sat up startled. A candy from Gilbert Blythe? A candy with a heart on it from Gilbert Blythe? How dare he? Anne threw the candy on the floor, stood up, and smashed it with her foot. Never, she cried, and stormed out of the classroom. Her dear friend Diana was close on her heels. Anne, where are you going? Diana asked. I'm done with school, Anne answered. A million questions swirled around in Diana's worried head. But what of our friendship? What will Marilla say? What will happen to me? I'd do almost anything for you, Diana, said Anne, but I can't do this. Please don't ask it. I'm not going to back to school as long as Mr. Phillips is the teacher. We have been, okay, so sorry. That was the end of the story. So, as we were reading, I hope you were visualizing, picturing what you think Anne would look like saying those things with the flowers in her hair when she's upset with her head down. Think about Gilbert Blythe and how he looks when he feels bad for her, and the candy and how they describe the candy with the heart on it. Think about all the descriptions, and then your visualizations, and then you guys are going to watch the movie on your own. And I want you to see, did your visualizations, did the pictures that you came up with in your head, did they match what you saw in the video? Think about what was the same about your visuals and what you saw in the video, and what was different about your visuals and what you saw in the video. And then you'll answer those questions for me in the attached questions. All right, good job, guys.